My name is Marty Dickinson, and this is the $1,000,000 Nugget. I have a very special guest with me. His name is Jon Block. Say hello, Jon.
Hello, Marty and everyone. Thanks for being here.
Welcome, welcome. So, Jon was one of our speakers on the Alaskan cruise that you by now have heard so much about. We had a blast. It was 7 nights and 11 speakers. We had 3 days worth of half sessions so that we would have all the rest of the time to party and go on excursions and enjoy Alaska and the water and all the things that we did there. It was so much fun. And Jon really stood out as somebody that I wanted to get to know more. And I heard about an event that he's having coming up, and I wanted to ask him about it because part of his presentation was all about speakers conducting their own events. So since 2011, Jon Block has presented on 500 plus stages and mentored over 1,500 entrepreneurs to use public speaking and live in-person events to dramatically grow their businesses and social impact. He has been hired to train public speaking at HBO and Google, and was named one of the top 20 conscious entrepreneurs of 2013. Jon is the host and curator of the Red Pill Experience, a 3-day San Diego-based joint venture retreat bringing together six-figure plus leaders. He is also the co-founder of Abundant Healthpreneur, a tribe dedicated to awakening and unifying humanity through the power of LinkedIn, public speaking, and live in-person events. Jon, we have a lot of people in this group that are only out there to get hired, to get paid their paycheck for getting on stage, and then they leave. They don't even try to sell anything back in the room. It's not about that for them. They get their paycheck and they go to the next speaking gig. What is your response to hearing that, first of all? Let's just start with that question and why you feel it's so important for even those kind of speakers to pursue having their own events.
I love this question so much. It's one that I have spent a lot of time with, and I appreciate us diving right in. First off, there's nothing wrong with anyone at any given time. So if where you're at right now is that you just want to do the keynotes, you want to speak, you want to get paid, that's completely fine. And you owe it to yourself to pursue that if that's really what's calling to you. And the point of our conversation right in this moment is to illuminate the full picture and to be breaking free of the matrix. This is going to be an analogy we'll be coming back to again and again, that the matrix is a system of control that is oftentimes keeping us stuck from living our best lives. And there's a certain matrix here around keynotes that we want to look at a bit more closely, that so many speakers now, there's more speakers now than ever before, are trying to get onto these keynote stages. And with corporate budgets, it's not something I've looked at much closely. I know that they're out there, yet it seems inherently limiting, stopping us from living our best lives if we were to operate within this particular matrix exclusively. So breaking free from this matrix, what does it look like? Well, one question we want to ask is, why are you speaking to begin with? If the answer is because I have a message and I want to get it out to people, that's fine. Again, there's nothing wrong with anyone. Just consider that it's not very deep and powerful. When we look to speakers, there's a few examples we look at: Martin Luther King, Steve Jobs. I'll just look at those two examples where Martin Luther King was speaking to end racism in this country. Steve Jobs is here to change the world by getting a personal computer in every single home and disrupt industries like the music industry and so forth. So he's here to make his dent in the universe. That's his quote. When you are up to a game like that, then you do everything possible to serve that particular end game. It's a much bigger game than I have something that I want to share. It's not about you. Ultimately, it's about the impact you have in people's lives, how things are fundamentally shifting for them. So then it raises the question, then, what is the best delivery system for that particular transformation in their lives? So example in a keynote scenario might be that somebody wants to uh, motivate their audiences to think differently about teamwork. Let's just say that's the case. Well, if you spend an hour on that, what's predictable is that they'll be motivated during that. By the end of that hour, they might have some things to think about, and then they get plunged back into their routines, and then it becomes hard to actually transform. So we define transformation as behavior change. So to actually change your behavior becomes harder. Versus if you were to host a 3-day event where you get them out of their regular environment and help them bust free of their matrix that they're trapped in by going somewhere offsite, and then you immerse them in a 3-day experience where they get to really confront how self-absorbed they've been, not just in their work environment, but where that comes from a childhood, like sort of persona that they develop that they now bring into the workplace, how they can open their heart and trust in ways they have not before, which might sound cheesy to some people and consider it might be the very thing that's missing. If you think about the nature of teamwork, it's trusting the people that you're with, having that common goal to rise together. This stuff you can't just deliver across a 1-hour keynote to really change behavior. So that's why we talk about hosting your own events as truly being the most transformational end game for people.
What kind of traits does a person need to have when they should start thinking about their having their own event?
What can you bring to this that nobody else is bringing to it right now? So I come from an artist background. I was in love with movies, still am, and saw myself as a screenwriter. And if I was going to write a movie that had been done before, then that movie did not deserve to exist, is the belief that I carried and that others carried around us. And this was, as we're told by professors, is a standard that was held. So I hold that same standard with live in-person events. What can you bring that no one else is? And this is just basic business sense with making movies and with hosting events. Why should someone stop what they're doing in life and go to your event or watch your movie? It's because they're getting something that they cannot get anywhere else. Now, if you're going to cram as much value as possible, that should always be the end game. Then you want to look at the event and how it satisfies different areas of life that truly matter to people. So, one of the things that I personally abhor is when I know that's a strong word, but it really jars at my system when I'm at a conference and let's say it's on internet marketing and they're just going over techniques for internet marketing one after another on this multi-speaker conference stage. And I could have just watched this whole thing on Zoom. Or you could have sent me some YouTube videos and I could have watched the speaker relay their content, probably in a more engaging way because they would have had like cutaway B-roll and other things they could do in a video presentation than on stage talking. That really jars at me. When I'm at an in-person event, I want to be activated to my highest self. I want it to be a spiritual experience. I want to have the best relationships form with people possible. You have a responsibility as a speaker to help me bond with my fellow audience members. Don't be so pompous to think that's all about you. It's 50% about you and 50% about the audience, and mileage will vary on those percentages. Yet fundamentally, it's a huge part is to bond that audience. So this is why I really want to disrupt the notion of I have a message that I want to share. And to start being a little bit turned off by the pretentiousness of that and the self-absorption, and to say, well, who is it really about? It's about the audience. I have a dream, to cite Martin Luther King, was there to unify the audience. It's not just about Dr. King's dream. He's speaking to the dream that each of us has for equality across all of humanity. And in that, oh gosh, the conversations that can happen amongst the people attending.
Right.
So the bonding of the people is the number one thing. Your responsibilities as a community creator when you are hosting your own events. That is the most important thing that can truly change lives, in my opinion.
Now, as people are listening to this, the first thing that comes to mind is the length of a 3-day event. Okay, maybe I could have my own workshop and do 3 or 4 hours and start off with that and work my way up. but 3 full days. I mean, I say that now. Our cruise was 7 days, and even though we only had 3 days of sessions, I mean, as the organizer of the event, I was on the whole time. I mean, every time I walked down a hallway, I was seeing somebody that was part of that audience, and I'd need to interact with them. So 3 days, one day, 7 days, doesn't matter. It is an investment for you, the facilitator, the one that puts on the show. How
Well,
do you raise people's confidence that they can do such a thing?
yes, the people whom I speak with and work with in developing their 3-day events are all people who've been through a 3-day transformational event themselves.
Aha.
You have no business putting on a 3-day transformational event unless you yourself have attended a 3-day transformational event and had your life transformed in some significant way. So for me, I can point to 5 different 3-day transformational events I've been to going back to 2010, where I can say distinct inflection point in my life. I'm not the same person at the end of those 72 hours as I was the person going in. I could distinctly say how about each of these 3-day events. Knowing that and the power of these 3-day events and my own alignment with it, it's obvious to me that I'm meant to be doing it. Because if I decide then that my life is about transforming others and creating community, which became clear to me after the first of those 3-day transformational events, like, yeah, that's what I want to do, what they're doing with me, then that's the vehicle for me. Now, for those people who uh, have attended events and have this concern, fear about, are they good enough? Are they ready enough to be hosting a 3-day event? What I can tell you is that myself and others who've done it are always surprised by how the time fills up so quickly when you factor in breakfast, lunch, and dinner, when you factor in guest presenters whom you really want to showcase to your people you really believe in that made a difference in your life, or you believe there's some undiscovered gem, or like, oh, it'd be amazing if I got this person. I've been listening to their podcast for so long. What if I got them to speak at my event? Then the interactions with the people. Because again, it's not just about you. Please don't ask yourself the question, how do emphasis on I, right?
Right.
Fill 3 days worth of speaking. You
Right.
don't. That'd be so boring. Don't do that. So you get to come up with interactions that for the audience members and exercises, and you take breaks because you might have them do a 30-minute exercise just with each other in ways that you can't possibly have during a keynote where it is all about you. So really have fun with that, and knowing that the bonding that happens across the 3-day events is really what the end game is for. I find that the topic of the 3-day event is secondary. It's about whatever gets people in the door, gets the kind of people you want there. Yeah, ultimately, it's about the community bonding, so that, yes, when you do make an offer for them to stay in your community, it's most likely to go over well and be a yes, because the bonding they feel with one another. Yes, they want to stay in each other's lives.
Well, that's my next question, is about populating this event. That's probably one of the most scariest parts of conducting any event. In fact, I've come to call it the heart attack curve, is when you make that decision and you put the down payment down on your location where you're going to
Yeah.
have this thing, and then you've got this curve that you have to fill the seats. You need butts in the seats. So a lot of people will wait until the last week before the event even happens, and that whole time before, you're thinking, should I really have this event, or should I cancel it and get my money back and see if I can? And a lot of people, you quickly get a reputation for not following through with your events. That's why with Speakers Speak Live, we always have our Wednesday event. It doesn't matter if 2 people or 200 people show up. On the Alaskan cruise, I was going anyway. You were going anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
If nobody else signed up for it, we'd still be there on that ship. It was an event. So speak a little bit about getting butts in the seats. I mean, what are you seeing out there that maybe has changed in the past 5 years? So, COVID or otherwise, what, economic factors that we have. I just drove down the street and we're over $4 a gallon now for gas. So whenever that happens, things change and people start closing up their wallets and purses, and they don't go to events as much. So you need to up the game of your event and the value for it, all those things. But what kind of suggestion, again, coming back to the confidence thing, somebody conducting their own event, how can you give them confidence that they'll be able to get butts in the seats and actually have this event?
Yes. So I personally don't use the phrase butts in seats. And that might have something to do with how I view it energetically. I would see it as lives transformed. And when it is about having lives transformed, I do question, who am I to let my fear get in the way of lives being transformed? That's a right I do not have. I deny myself that right. And this may or may not resonate with people. So when someone feels the call to serve at a higher level, you could say that I deny myself the right to take myself out of that calling. Now, people have all this grace and humanity. I think this is a problem, frankly, with people, is that they can be compassionate with themselves to the point of indulging their lower self. Like people do this with food, for instance, where they'll say, I gotta have some comfort food. I can't be so restrictive in my nutrition and eating fruits and vegetables. I got to enjoy life as they scarf down their fourth slice of pizza.
Right.
Right. So we all have to find that balance with ourselves and call ourselves out. When are we acting from our lower self, which is more indulgent, which could be fear and it could be the taste buds? Or when are we in service of a higher self, which is to humanity? I really encourage people to get accustomed to always making that decision for their higher self and just make that the go-to. So the value and originality of the event we've spoken to as a way that could call people forth to get their life transformed at the event is a big part of it. In terms of the value stacking, it is useful to not sell the event a la carte. And what I mean by that is that if you do a value stack where someone gets something right away when they sign up with you, and this is where I've done an online training course accompanied with one-on-one sessions. So first it was with me, and then as my business grew, I hired coaches, and they're the ones who deliver the one-on-one sessions that would hold their hand through the online training course, and then it would include the live event with it. So you're hitting boom, 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 the desire for the instant gratification and go at your own pace, home study aspect of us, then the one-on-one guidance that can be done remotely, and then the in-person community event. So between those three being implicit inside this one package, it becomes a lot easier to fill your event, as opposed to if I had said, this event is all there is, right? So I could have someone in England signed up for this package I described, where they get the online course and the one-on-one calls, and then they might plan out like, all right, I'm going to come to the event eventually. So let me say they didn't even come, honestly, because they said they got so much value from the online course and the one-on-ones. One more thing I'll add about canceling events. Do not cancel your events. You said it
Thank
great,
you.
Marty, about earning a reputation as someone who cancels events. I would say that the biggest problem with that is that it does take a sledgehammer to your self-confidence. You know yourself as someone who does not commit and follow through. That's what you're signaling to yourself and to the universe. So the breakthrough in leadership and self-confidence that comes from pulling off a 3-day event, just hosting it in general, is immeasurable. It's worth more than any master's degree, in my opinion. If this is your career that you're working on, it's more directly in line and valuable than a master's degree. So put on a 3-day event, learn a bunch through it, decide that even if it's just one person there, that you're going to do it. And in filling that event, you'll do some of the things we talked about. So how you design the package, you include a lot of things. You'll speak on stages, because those who come to in-person speaking events are the type of people who want to go to in-person events, and it stands to reason would want to have a deeper 3-day immersion. So for that reason, I prefer speaking at multi-day in-person conferences as opposed to, say, a 2-hour lunch and learn, right? Because those people have less invested. They're not the type of people who you can bank on, obviously, like going to 3-day events.
Right.
So getting on those stages, I'll do stage swaps with people. You speak at mine, I'll speak at yours. That's been a very good strategy for me. And then you invite them into the event. It could be in a one-on-one conversation. And this is where you get to charge enough for your package to justify it. So in the past, I've charged 2,500 to 5,000 for the package I described, the online course and one-on-ones, and then the live event. And it was really a no-brainer in my mind at $5,000, like how much value it was. So in my mind, it was worth at least 5 times that much. So anyone who couldn't see that and be willing to invest 5,000 was just not my client.
Right. Yeah, that's a good differentiator. I mean, the whole idea of someone coming to a multi-day event is that the price tag should not determine if they pay their mortgage or not next month. I mean, I don't want anybody to go broke from attending one of my events. So it's like, well, just work on that. Maybe save up for another time. But there does need to be a certain level of uh, accomplishment, I think, because someone that is willing to put in that kind of dollar figure into investing in themselves knows the importance of investing in themselves to begin with. Whereas someone that doesn't have the money to invest, I've found anyway, personally, that they're so fixated on where they're going to get their next paycheck from that they don't have time to invest in themselves. They don't have that luxury to do that. They're probably the ones that need to invest in themselves the most, but yet they have to handle this first part first before they can take that on.
Yeah,
So
I think it
let's
comes
talk a
down
little bit
to what
about
kind of
that.
transformation. Yeah, it comes down to what transformation are you meant to deliver. If you're someone that is, say, a sales trainer and someone who loves sales, loves training others in sales, then it might make sense to have someone, as odd as it sounds, go into significant credit card debt to take your program, because that's what's going to get them out of the credit card debt that they're in begin with, is learning how to sell using your methodology. So someone
Right.
like Alex Hermosi, if he offered a course that could help you learn how to actually sell your stuff to anyone, anytime, that might be a course worth taking. Then again, you might not be in that particular niche of transformation. I'm not. I'm more interested in cultivating abundant tribe leaders, ones who are going to be the Martin Luther Kings and Steve Jobses of the future. It takes time to cultivate that. So who they become as leaders. So there's stuff that it's more than any techniques. It's an inside out transformation. So for those people, there requires a certain patience and dedication. And that's one reason why I favor the retreat model. uh, it's not about people just getting as many of them in the room. It's about the quality of the people. I am someone who's very passionate about creating community. Is one of the reasons I'm put on this earth. So the quality of the community is a lot stronger too, because these people all have proven success behind them.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask that question too, because the meaning behind this. How did you get to the point where you decided it was important for you personally to start having these 3-day events? And the reason I ask is because a lot of this, when this step occurs, there's something in all of our pasts that lead us to this. The same thing happened with me, and this wasn't my first event that I've been involved with, but years ago I thought, why am I even doing this? And I could look back into my life, into my past, and it all made sense that of course that's what I would do. So I'd like you to share that with us a little bit.
The first event I ever put on was when I was a senior in high school, and it was a house party for my dear friend Bobak. So I was not popular in high school, and Bobak was one of the very few friends I had. And it was his 18th birthday, and I was blessed with having a decent sized house and parents who traveled a lot for work. So that was the conclusion, was to put on a house party while my parents were away. And
But they were
what
happy
we
about that.
and I feel like the statute of limitations has expired, so I've told her about this openly as of a couple of years ago, and we can get a good chuckle out of it. So, uh, one benefit, I suppose, of not having a group of friends at the time was that we had to invite anyone and everyone if we're gonna fill the room, so to speak. So we did that, me in particular, because I wanted to be the one, like, I'll handle a Bob back, you just show up. So I invited everyone in our grade of 600 people, and it became the thing that everyone knew about. I printed flyers, and I made the focal point of every single conversation the 2 weeks leading up to it. Like, if you were talking to me in the 2 weeks leading up to it, there's no way you're going to get out of that conversation without knowing Bob X's birthday on March 18th. So I we ultimately got about 80 people at the party. And what was so amazing about it, Marty, is that we had people from all the different high school cliques come together, people who had never said any words to each other at all in high school were now talking at my house and having their very first conversation and finding common ground. Then come Monday, I would see them having lunch with each other. And that's when I knew that there's no higher calling. This is changing lives. The quality of our lives is the quality of our relationships. I believe that then, and I believe it now more than ever. So to be able to change lives through hosting events, it directly correlates. So I highly encourage anyone host events, even if it's a once a year birthday dinner, host events, because just like with the speakers, it's not all about you. Just recognize the self-absorption to think that way. It's about the people that you can serve. Your birthday party is an act of service. It brings people together to have a meaningful conversations and interactions with each other. I can't tell you how much business and romance and friendship has sprung from my birthday gatherings. It's a responsibility I have to host a birthday party. So consider at a much higher level the 3 day transformational event. It was taking something I already love and just being more purposeful about it. How do I make a successful business out of this? Who are the people that I really believe I can serve and make the biggest ripple effect on the planet?
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I've certainly learned being part of National Speakers Association and Speakers Speak Live is how important it is to hang around the people that are doing what you want to do. So you have an event coming up. This is an opportunity for people to hang around other people that are wanting to put on their own events. So why don't you describe that a little bit? Because if this is something you, the listener, is thinking about that you would like to do someday, you need to start hanging around people that are doing it. And that's what Jon is here for. So Jon, why don't you go ahead and describe what this event is coming up here?
Mm. Our event is called the Red Pill Experience. It happens 2 times per year. So the next is September 25th through 28th in San Diego. So we rent beautiful mansions in the mountains of San Diego. We just love the getaway location of it. It's a full-on retreat experience, so the overnight is included, and we have chef coming in for incredibly delicious, healthy, organic, high vibe meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the entire 4 days. And what the purpose of the event is, this is our tagline, is breaking through the wealth matrix.
Hmm.
I'm a transformational first responder. So the issues that people are the least transformed about, where ego, where fear tends to hijack them the most, that's where we go. And I can certainly look to my own life where on my Chinese mother side, my Jewish father side, there are some what we call money shadows there, parts that have been hidden, repressed, denied, and where we've acted out culturally in ways that do not reflect our highest self. So controlling others through accumulation of wealth, believing that inflating the ego, believing that you're better than someone because of how much money you have, the fear of not having enough, the scarcity, right? Those are all things that I'm familiar with, as I would assert many people are in some form or other. And it's especially important now to be breaking free of this wealth matrix because life is more expensive now than ever. $1.3 trillion was printed by our US government as COVID relief funds. We're now dealing with hyperinflation as a direct fallout of that. the American dream has been shattered for many people who are just average Joes. Owning a house, accumulating wealth, it's complete fantasy land. Yet we just go along with this without actually deciding how can we break through this wealth matrix and create far greater wealth. So the event is both personal transformation, delving into the psychology, breaking free of the chains of the past and how we've thought and operated regarding money and wealth accumulation, our relationship with power, how many people don't even think of themselves as being good with money. Well, if you don't think you're good in any relationship, you're going to avoid being in that relationship. So you have to believe, just like I did when I was dating my partner now, that I would be good for her, that I would be really adept at the skill called being in a relationship with her. You must believe that way about money, right? That you have this
Sure.
untapped potential that you get to
Absolutely.
actualize. And then the other thing, in addition to the personal transformation, of course, the community is exposing people to new passive income vehicles. So investments, really getting on the court with investments from hedge funds. We also have tax secrets as well. So that's related in how to really keep so much more of the money you do make
Mhm.
and really doing what the wealthy do in this country, generational wealth. It is about making money, keeping money, growing money, passing on money. That's who this event is for. So I want to add that a lot of people have this trigger about money that they'll project, oh, this is greedy. It's all about the money. And no, it's not. The purpose of this is to give people the freedom so that they can live their highest purpose, so that they can empower others. You can't pour from an empty cup. So the phrase has been money makes the world go around. There is some truth to that. The more money you make, the more adept you are or able you are to write a check to create a well in Africa, to feed a village of people.
Mhm.
That's how stuff happens. So those are the kinds of people who come to Red Pill XP who are looking to create greater freedom themselves, not so they can buy a bunch of fancy toys, so they can make a bigger impact in the world.
That's great. And when is the date?
September 25th through 28th.
Okay. So where should people go when they decide they want to get more information about this?
So we have an application process because, as you get the sense from hearing me talk about our events and community, that we don't just take anyone. So to make sure this is the right fit, you'll go to redpillxp.com, redpillxp.com, and go and fill out an application, and then I'll speak with you personally. And this will be a fun, illuminating conversation. I know I might come off pretty intense to certain people, but I do have a strong curiosity about what makes people tick. And in that curiosity, people oftentimes have breakthroughs about themselves and they feel very seen and gotten. And then there's also an opportunity for me to connect you with people as well, regardless if you come to the event or not. So I do like doing the one-on-one interactions myself. So
Mhm.
that's redpillxp.com. And if for some reason you feel that you're not ready to apply, then email me directly, Jon, Jon, at redpillxp.com.
Okay. Just two more questions for you here. And one is, can you share with us somebody that you've worked with, you've taken them through this process, and now they're just like rising stars going through the whole process, setting up their own events? Who would not, you don't have to mention their name, but I'm just curious about your star client that has come through this process.
Oh, we have several. So the clients who have gone through our process. And for this particular event, we are honing in on the wealth matrix and create more freedom for people when it comes to the hosting events. That is still an element of this. We do spend one day on this, and from people who've gone through our process in the past, we have one client who's hosting her first retreat in Colombia. As a result, she got the courage to, because she had spent some time in Colombia and doing her own research. Guess what? Hosting a retreat, you save a lot more money than hosting one in San Diego. And you have the exotic location, and it does call forth a certain type of person that she wants to work with. So she has the courage, she and her life partner, to host her retreat in Colombia. Others have already hosted their retreats through after working with us in Italy and Greece. We're playing that type of international game. And they have learned how to design them in such a way where people want to sign up for it, where it provides something really unique and desired by their people, and they have the ability to communicate it as well. It's my role as a speaker trainer. I know how to empower them to communicate in such a way that addresses the pain, calls them forth to this higher level of commitment, and then their life gets transformed.
Awesome. Well, like I end almost every $1 million Nugget interview, I like to ask the question about why you feel this is the perfect time to do whatever it is I'm interviewing the person about. So, why do you feel that right now, in this moment of history, is the best time in history, best time ever to host your own events?
This is the best time to be hosting your own events because of the COVID shutdowns that we all
Really?
experience, and
Okay.
the loneliness that
Yeah.
ensued as a result. And we saw people lost their heads. You think it's any accident that while in lockdown is when polarization just emerged to the extent that it did? People playing keyboard warrior, attacking each other on Facebook. Is it any accident that because we were cut off from in-person community that happens? This brings out the worst in human behavior. It separates us. It goes into our reptilian brains, like how we process things. So if you're somebody who watched this happen, perhaps got sucked into it a little yourself, and you know that humanity is meant to be better than this, to relate to each other in a way that is a lot more honoring, respectful, and connected to one another, then we got a lot of making up to do. So the solution is more in-person events, specifically ones that are designed for people to go deep into who they are, to share vulnerably in front of one another, stretch their comfort zones, and bond with one another.
That's so well said. All right. Well, that wraps it up for this edition of the $1 Million Nugget. Thank you, Jon, so much for your time being with me today.
Thank you, Marty. Go out there, make a difference, and make it rain, y'all.
Just like what Jon said, this is the best time in history to host your own events. So I want to know if you're going to host an event, please let me know. We can even help you promote that in the Speaker Speak group. And instead of using butts in the seats, we'll go with so that you can transform lives. How's that, Jon?
I love it.
All right. Thanks again, and we'll see you the next time.